When my mom died, my cousin said, I hope you're not expecting anything. You were her biggest disappointment. I felt my chest cave in. I had slept on hospital benches for months while he vacationed in Bali. You think she'd leave you anything after the way you turned out? He laughed. But that laughter didn't last long when he saw the newspaper clipping Mom had kept taped behind her bedroom mirror. Silas looked me dead in the eye across her bedroom, the room I had been cleaning out piece by piece, choking on the scent of her lotion and old paper, and said, I hope you're not expecting anything. You were her biggest disappointment. Just like that. No emotion, no hesitation. I had just set aside her reading glasses and her rosary, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. I'd spent months living out of vending machines and sleeping on cold hospital benches, while he was busy taking selfies in a jungle villa in Bali. And now he was here, arms folded, smug smirk on his face, daring me to challenge him. He was rifling through her jewelry box like a man with a birthright, pulling out the gold locket she used to wear on Sundays and examining it like he might toss it in his pocket. When I said nothing, just stood frozen with my hands still dusted in drawer liner and old perfume powder, he laughed. You think she'd leave you anything after the way you turned out? And it stung. God, it stung. Because I hadn't turned out how anyone expected, not even myself. But I had been there. Through every fall, every frightening scan, every hallucination. And he had the audacity to laugh. That laughter didn't last long. He walked over to the vanity, still muttering under his breath, and caught sight of something taped behind the mirror. I'd never noticed it before. It had yellowed at the corners, curled slightly with time. He peeled it off carefully, curiosity etched into his face like a puzzle. His eyes scanned the paper, then narrowed. His lips stopped moving. The color drained from his face as he read and reread it, like he couldn't make sense of the words. His hand dropped to his side. The newspaper clipping fluttered to the ground like something heavy had fallen from his chest. I picked it up. I didn't have to read it. I already knew what it said. Mom had kept that article taped behind her mirror for nearly 2 decades. A quiet, secret tribute. To me, my name is Marnie. I'm 42 and have lived in Portland, Oregon all my life. I'm not anyone special on paper. Never married, no kids, worked in nonprofits most of my life. I have some friends, most of whom I barely see anymore, and I paint in my free time. My mother, Celeste, was my world, and for most of her last year, my only priority. Cancer came into our lives like an unwanted houseguest, making itself comfortable in her bones and refusing to leave. Her house, now my house, though I don't know how I feel about that yet, is an aging craftsman on East Burnside with wide windows and a squeaky porch swing she loved. She used to sit out there with a glass of iced tea, humming gospel songs under her breath. Toward the end, she couldn't even make it down the hallway without resting, let alone outside. I gave up my apartment and moved in the week her oncologist said the word hospice. I packed my life into 5 boxes and a duffel bag. The rest could wait. Silas didn't show up once. Not when we needed help getting her out of bed. Not when she started seeing things in the shadows and calling me by her sister's name. Not when I cried into her pillow after she forgot who I was. He sent a text once. Hope you're hanging in there, Bali's incredible, sending peace. I didn't even respond. I couldn't. When she passed, it was just me, the hospice nurse, and a soft rain tapping against the windows like the sky was crying with us. I sat with her for hours after, holding her hand long after it went cold. I cleaned her face, brushed her hair. I didn't call anyone until I was sure I'd said everything I needed to say. The funeral was quiet, modest, just the way she wanted. Silas showed up in a linen shirt like he was going to a brunch, not a burial. He made a speech about celebrating life and how she always inspired him to live fully. I nearly choked. After the service, he invited himself back to the house. Walked in like it was still his second home, like he'd grown up there too, which, in fairness, he had. Our mothers were sisters and close growing up. But Celeste and I had built something different, something more intimate in the last year. We'd suffered together. He hadn't suffered anything except mild jet lag. While I was sorting through Mom's belongings in her bedroom, Silas came in and made himself comfortable on the edge of the bed. So, he said, stretching like he'd just finished yoga, what's the situation with the estate? Did she even have a will? I told him yes, everything had been arranged. The lawyer would be in touch soon. He raised an eyebrow. She didn't mention anything to me. But I guess that's not surprising. She knew I was stable. I stared at him. You weren't even here. Because she didn't ask me to be. I figured you had it under control. She always liked giving you projects. Keep you busy. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said, she was dying, Silas. She wasn't assigned chores. He shrugged. It's not like I abandoned her. I was honoring her spirit, traveling, experiencing life. She always said she regretted not doing that more. I bit down on my tongue until it hurt. He was delusional, detached from the reality we'd all been living in. Well, the reality I had been living in while he sipped kombucha in Ubud. That's when he made his comment about me being her biggest disappointment. Like I hadn't given up everything to be by her side. Like I hadn't memorized the schedule of her medications, coaxed her into eating when she didn't want to, or sat with her in silence during her last coherent hours just so she wouldn't feel alone. I should have kicked him out, I should have yelled, but I was so tired. And then came the clipping. It was from the Oregonian, 2006. I was 19. A boy had fallen into the Willamette River near the Hawthorne Bridge. I saw it happen from the Riverwalk. Without thinking, I jumped in, pulled him out before anyone else could react. The paper did a piece on it the next day. There was a blurry picture of me in a fireman's blanket, wet hair stuck to my face, looking terrified. Mom had been furious, not proud, furious. She said I could have died, said I was reckless. She never mentioned it again. But there it was, taped behind her mirror like a secret altar. She'd been proud all along, just too scared to show it. Silas saw it, saw the headline, the photo, and for once he had nothing to say. And that silence was worth everything. He didn't say a word as he handed the clipping back to me. Just stood there, mouth slightly open, like he'd seen a ghost. I didn't take it from him right away. I waited. I wanted him to sit with that discomfort, that realization. That he didn't know her the way I did. That he hadn't been here for any of it. Not the hard parts, not the quiet moments, not the final breaths. I wanted him to feel the weight of that newspaper in his hand and understand what it meant to be seen by her in ways he never was. Eventually, he placed it gently on the vanity, right next to her old hairbrush. Then he left the room. I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. I stood there a long time after he was gone, staring at the spot where the clipping had been taped. I ran my fingers along the outline it had left behind. Faint marks where the tape had browned and the paper had curled just slightly. The way paper does when it's been undisturbed for years. I must have looked at that mirror 100 times over the last few months, combing Mom's hair, wiping her face, sitting beside her as she tried to find her own reflection. But I never saw it. She hid it well. She always did. The silence in the house after Silas left was different from before. Not peaceful, not yet. Just cleared out, like the air after a storm. I opened the window and let the breeze in. It carried with it the smell of wet earth and pine, the kind of scent that reminds you how old the neighborhood is, how many stories the houses could tell if they were allowed to speak. I didn't sleep that night. I wandered the house barefoot, checking rooms I'd already cleaned, opening drawers I'd already emptied, as if something else might reveal itself. A letter, a tape, another clue that Mom had seen me in ways I never thought she had. But there was nothing. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the wood under my feet. The next morning, Silas showed up again. I didn't expect him to. I heard his knock, 3 sharp raps, and I debated pretending I wasn't home. But then I thought, let's finish this. He was wearing the same clothes. His hair was messy, and his usual swagger had dimmed. I left my sunglasses, he said. In the kitchen, maybe. I didn't move from the doorway. They're on the counter, you can get them. He stepped inside, looked around like he barely recognized the place. He didn't go straight to the kitchen. He lingered in the hallway, eyes drifting toward Mom's bedroom. I didn't stop him. He walked slowly, as if crossing into sacred ground. When he reached the vanity again, he stared at it. The clipping was gone. I had put it in a keepsake box the night before, but I could tell he was still seeing it. She never told me about that, he said quietly. She didn't tell anyone, I replied. Not even me. He turned to face me, leaned against the doorframe like the weight of his own body was too much. Why'd she hide it? I shrugged. Maybe she didn't want me to know how much it meant to her. Or maybe she wanted to keep it safe. He nodded slowly like he was swallowing something bitter. I didn't know. No, I said, folding my arms. You didn't. Because you weren't here. That made him flinch. Not physically, but in that small, telling way, eyes blinking faster, jaw tightening. It was the first time I'd seen him stripped of his usual confidence. I thought, he began, then stopped himself. I thought she never really forgave you, for the drinking, for quitting your job, for all of it. I bristled. It wasn't like he didn't know the history. I'd had a rough patch in my 30s. Lost a job I loved. Went through a bad breakup. Spent a year numbing out the pain with vodka and isolation. Mom had pulled me out of that. Slowly, painfully. She'd shown up on my doorstep every Sunday with groceries, even when I begged her not to. She was the reason I got sober. I owed her everything. That was a long time ago, I said. She didn't forget, but she never stopped loving me. He looked down, then nodded. She loved you, he admitted. She really did. We stood in silence after that. Not companionable, but not hostile either. Just two people sitting with the weight of someone they both lost and realizing they knew her in completely different ways. Then he cleared his throat. So, the will, everything goes to you. I looked him straight in the eye. Yes. He didn't argue, not like I expected him to. I think he already knew. I think the moment he saw that clipping, he understood he wasn't the favorite, not the way he always believed he was. She could have told me, he mumbled. You could have called. That shut him up. He grabbed his sunglasses and walked toward the door. Just before stepping out, he paused. If there's anything of hers you don't want, maybe let me know. I'd like to have something. Even just a book or a scarf or something. I didn't answer right away. He didn't wait. The door clicked shut behind him and I was alone again. I stood in the kitchen, one hand on the counter, staring at the spot where he'd picked up his glasses. My head was full of noise, memories, grief, resentment, all tangled together. And beneath it all, something else. A question I didn't know how to answer. What would Mom want me to do now? Not in terms of her things. That part was already decided. But in terms of us, me and Sela's, the fractured family that remained, the uneasy peace hovering just beneath the surface. I looked around the kitchen. Her teacup still sat in the drying rack. Her grocery list was still on the fridge, faded ink, but still legible. Cinnamon, rice, the kind of things she bought without thinking. I leaned against the sink, my back aching from all the cleaning and sorting and crying I'd done in the past week. And I knew the hardest part wasn't over. Not yet. I gave myself a few days before I touched anything else in the house. Grief is strange like that. It doesn't hit in a straight line. Some days I'd wake up and move through her closet like I was just helping her pack for a trip. Other days, I sat on the floor of her bedroom in my pajamas, hugging her old cardigan and crying so hard I couldn't see straight. The silence in the house pressed in like humidity, and Sela's didn't come back, not in person anyway, but a week later I got an email. Short, dry, from a lawyer. Sela's had concerns about the will. No official challenge yet, but the lawyer wanted to review all documents pertaining to the estate. It wasn't a surprise. He couldn't take it gracefully. He never could. I didn't panic. I called Mom's estate attorney, Miss Delphine, an older woman with a gravelly voice and eyes like she could read your thoughts. We went over the will again. Mom had updated it 2 years ago, right after I hit my first sobriety milestone. She'd left everything to me. The house, the accounts, even the battered upright piano she never played but couldn't bear to sell. There was no ambiguity, no loopholes. Do you think he'll really go through with a lawsuit? I asked. Delphine sighed. Probably, but he doesn't have a case. Still, if he wants to waste his money trying to fight something airtight, let him. But it didn't sit right. Not because I was afraid I'd lose. I wasn't. It was because I knew Sela's. Knew how he operated. He wasn't after the house or her heirloom dishes. He was after perception. He needed to look like the one who should have inherited, like the rightful heir whose legacy had been wrongfully taken. He wasn't grieving her. He was grieving the image he had of himself in her eyes. And that was something I couldn't give back to him, but I could show him what he'd missed, what he'd never even tried to be part of. So I began to plan, not a cruel revenge. Not fire and fury, just something satisfying, a reckoning made of facts and silence. First, I went to Mom's storage boxes in the basement. I started pulling together a small collection. Photos, handwritten notes, letters I'd written to her in rehab, birthday cards she'd saved, and yes, the clipping. I scanned it all. I printed it into a neat little portfolio with a short introduction written in my own handwriting. To whoever finds this one day, this is the story of a woman named Celeste and her daughter Marnie. It's not perfect. But it's true. I contacted our neighborhood association and asked if they'd allow me to host a small event. A celebration of community and care, I called it. I invited people from the block, the hospice nurses, even Mom's old church group. I let people speak, and speak as they did. They told stories I'd never heard before, how Mom used to leave baked goods on their porch during hard winters, how she helped Mrs. Yarrow down the block pay for a heating bill when she fell behind. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I shared some of the photos. I read a short note she'd written me during my worst year. Even in your dark days, I see your light. I am proud of you. Always. And at the very end, I unveiled the clipping. I read the article out loud. The room was quiet. I didn't say Silas's name. I didn't need to, but I knew word would get back to him. Portland's community circles run small, especially among the old family friends who'd known us both as kids. And sure enough, within 3 days, he posted a long, dramatic caption on Instagram about misrepresentation and family narratives. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Silence when you're standing on solid ground is louder than any defense. He didn't pursue the legal challenge after that. Weeks passed. I kept cleaning, kept clearing the dust of decades out of drawers and closets. I started painting again, small pieces, mostly in shades of blue, calm things. I thought about teaching an art class at the community center. Life was still lonely, but not in the same way. It was a chosen solitude now, not a helpless one. And then, one afternoon, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name in a handwriting I knew well. Inside was a photo of the two of us as kids, maybe 6 or 7, sitting on the porch eating popsicles. Behind us, Mom and Aunt Faye were laughing at something, their arms linked like vines. On the back, Silas had written, "For what it's worth, I don't remember the day, but I remember being happy. Maybe that's something." I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just tucked the photo into the portfolio with everything else. A small offering. Too late to matter, maybe, but still, something. And that was the real lesson. People show you who they are when things get hard. But sometimes they show you something else when things get quiet. Silas didn't lose a lawsuit. He lost something harder to measure. Respect, trust, the mythology of being the golden boy. And I didn't take revenge with fire or cruelty. I simply opened the door and let the truth walk through. In the end, I didn't have to prove anything. Mom already had. She'd done it with a piece of yellowed tape and a clipping hidden behind a mirror, proof that she'd seen me, even when I thought I was invisible. And Silas, he finally saw it too. I live in this house now. Her house. My house. And every time I walk past that mirror, I see something she left behind, not just the image of myself, but a legacy of being enough.